Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to change the world one starfish or one person at a time. As always, guys, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. I love all that stuff. You're definitely going to want to share today's episode. We were chatting before and getting carried away. I'm like, we got to put this thing on record. We got to give it to you guys. So we're really excited for our guest today, Michelle. Thanks for being on.
Let's go.
Real quick, I'll give a little background and we're going to dig into a lot. Right now, Michelle runs a business consultant agency. She's an author, she's a speaker, she's out of Florida. She helps businesses grow, which is, I mean, if you're growing a business, that's a good thing. You don't want it to contract. So really excited to have you on, Michelle. So tell us a little bit, let's get into things. Like we were already talking about like way back, you were 19, you were in a vision board. Let's go way back. And what I wanted to touch on there was like, where did the vision board at 19 come from? Like that's young. Was you raised that way? Where did that even come from?
Yeah, I'm only 28, so it wasn't that long ago. But no, seriously, it was so odd, right? I just remember always thinking, like, even reading magazines, like whether it was Tiger Bee or whatever the hell I was reading back then, right? I remember looking through magazines and just seeing things like pop off the page. Like, oh, there's a cruise ship. Oh, there's that vacation. Oh, there's that. And the truth is that I grew up with very humble upbringings. There were no vacations. I had never flown on a plane to go places. My parents both worked for a municipality, and they lived paycheck to paycheck. And so vacations were getting in a car on a Sunday and like going for a Sunday drive and over to Rhode Island and getting a lobster roll. And for me, I think that when I always had an entrepreneurial mindset, right? I always thought, I want bigger. And in those early days, I think you do want stuff. And I was definitely in stuff mode because things were popping off the pages at me. And I just thought to myself, like, I know that I can create this. Like, I can create a lemonade stand and make $60 this weekend. I can have a Burger King backyard fair and create $100 this weekend and babysit and do the things that, I couldn't go get a job, but I could create money. And I had an early sense of that I knew that if I pulled things into my view, or things obviously pull into your view, I think that's the key. What you see in a magazine or what you dream about is completely different than what I see. And so for me, it was like this creative space where things were popping off the page. And I grabbed a poster board, started, pasting things on. And it's funny because that was like literally pre-Tony Robbins. And I just remember thinking, does anybody else think like me? And then Tony Robbins came along, right, in his infomercials. And I was like, oh my God, there's somebody that thinks like me. But I think for me, the biggest thing was a lot of times as I was talking out loud about these things, what was mirrored back to me was a sense of scarcity and get your head out of the clouds. You're thinking too big, get a job. You're 18, you need health insurance, right? Back then you were off your parents' health insurance at 18. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, that's such small thinking, but it was the only thinking around me. And so I think for me, I was stuck, honestly, Angela, like in between this, like, well, I think this is how I think, but I don't really, obviously this isn't normal. And what do I even do with this? I didn't know who I wanted to be or what I wanted to do when I grew up. I just knew that I wanted it to be six figures. So, you'd see the ads that say make 100,000 a year. I'm like, okay, like that'll get me all the things that I want. And I started answering those ads, right? And it's funny because I actually landed in financial services as an admin, like walked in the door. And let me tell you, what showed up for me in that interview was a mentor who said to me during the interview, on our time every day, you're going to have to read 20 minutes of something positive. And I was like, okay. I was 19 years old. I'm like, okay. I had never read anything positive. Nobody had ever put anything in front of me that would spark that, the vision of what it looked like to dream and set goals and sales strategy and all of those things. And my first day at work, I was handed the power of positive thinking. And I was told to go sit in the coffee room for 20 minutes and read. It was at, 2:00. I'm like, this is cool. I got a lunch break and a reading break. And it literally was like the same thing. The words were flying off the page and hitting me in the soul and waking me up and going, oh, so this is something normal. I'm just not in a circle or around people that think this way, live this way, act this way. and I just need to find my people. And then lo and behold, Tony Robbins shows up, right? Like probably a year later. But that was the beginning. The beginning was like, there was clarity for me that what you put into your mind is you can create your own reality, that you can set goals, you can influence people, you can be a leader, you can mentor others as I was mentored, and you can dream big. You absolutely can dream big.
Mm-hmm. So,
Mm-hmm.
so you were like a lemonade stand, you were doing burgers in a backyard. Um, Interesting, because some parents wouldn't let you do some of that stuff. So,
Yeah.
how, I mean, your parents, while it sounds like they didn't maybe understand you, they were very supportive and there was a belief poured into you. Do you believe that?
Yeah,
Well,
I totally do. And I can see that today. Of course, our story that we tell ourselves when we're living that, and we're in like, I left out of the house at 19 and, my parents were supportive. I think the words were like, don't let the door hit you in the ass. And you have one time to come back and one time only, use it wisely. And I was like, oh, so let me tell you, there were many times, right? I literally left out and Visa and MasterCard showed up as my angel investors, thank God, because I definitely was not prepared for buying shampoo and razors and all the things that we leave out of the house. And we're like, oh, somebody else paid for that. I was thinking rent, groceries. I went and got a brand new car at the same time that I got this job. So not only did I have the overhead of a household, I had a new car, and I'm dreaming big. So I'm taking vacations. I'm getting new clothes. I'm buying shit I want for my apartment. And I found myself a couple of years later, $15,000 in debt. Now, one thing I'll tell you, my parents didn't know any of that, right? They were like, oh, she's doing great. But on Wednesday, I was back home for dinner. On the weekends, I was there for lunch because there was no money for
there's no
groceries.
food. This is your
There
food.
was no food. And I'm
You're
like, well,
such
I'm
a
not
good
going to,
daughter coming
yeah,
home all the time.
that's right. I remember my father being like, what is she doing here again? And my mother was like, just stop, let her, she's here. And of course, that's what you want, right? You have kids, you always want them to come back. You just don't want them to move back. So I think for me, I can look back now and see how supportive my parents
Mm-hmm.
were. And especially today, my dad passed away at 54. And so it's been 23 years, but my mom, I just won 2 Stevie Awards for my newest book, The Path to Profits, for Best Business for the Year. And my mom came to New York City and was there for that moment of me getting on stage and came up with me. I asked her to come up with me. Yeah. So,
So cool.
I think the truth is that we come into our young adult years with a lot of stories around what our parents did or didn't do. The truth is they do the best that they can do. And as I have as a parent, it hasn't always been right, but we do the best that we can do. And I think that part of our own journey is healing those stories and not letting them paralyze us, right? Like our destiny is bigger than our history. And if we continue to write the same words about our history and our story and what happened in our childhood, and I understand that's, when you go through trauma, that's really challenging, but there's support. And if you're going to live your best life and you're going to chase your potential, you've got to be able to heal those stories so that you can move forward and see things in a way that maybe are a little clearer as we're adults and we start to get the support and the healing, so that we can think bigger and live bigger.
It's so good and so true. And if you're listening to this and you're like, my parents were not even there, they were not supportive at all, you know what? You can still win. But do look at the good sometimes, because I think sometimes we do look at like, and we're in a society of like, oh my gosh, what was your trauma? where
Yeah.
where was the F up? And there's got to be one. And
Yeah.
you start looking for the problems instead of
Yeah,
looking
I
for like
agree.
what they helped you with.
Yeah, well, I love that. I love that you just gave me that reflective question, right? Because I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. For me to think long back to that's the story that I'm telling, but here's the truth, right? And it's funny because like I had this huge realization probably last year where somebody said to me, "Oh, when did you start buying crystals? Like, I have crystals like on my desk and everywhere I've got whatever. Like these are my tools." And they're just a beautiful, energetic tool for me. And I had to think about it. And I was like, oh my God, my father, who was a public works department, okay, like guy working in the city, then went to like the water department and worked in a lab. he found an art studio like on his way home one day and pulled in, and it was called Nature's Art. And he went in, and these people would go all over the world and go bring back minerals and stones. And he bought me a lapis lazuli, and he gave it to me to put on my desk. And I had just opened up, just bought the agency. And he was like, you're crazy to do that. You're going to fail. Like, he said a lot of things that he probably shouldn't have said, but he walked in with a lapis lazuli and he said, I want you to know this is the success stone. And he gave me the meaning in a little card, and I put it on my desk. And I think, this is my dad, forever in blue jeans, right? Neil Diamond
guy, blue collar.
Yeah, Camel cigarettes and his t-shirt, right? Walking around. And I'm like, wait a minute, it came from him. The beginning of my journey of inviting in tools, somehow he landed in a shop, and then he started to learn. And he never really even invoked it in me, but on a Saturday, he'd be like, hey, you want to go to that shop and check it out? And I just wanted time with my dad and lunch, right? And I was like, yeah. And so I love the reflection piece that you just gave me, because I never thought, for 30 years, I didn't think about the fact that he was somebody who influenced a piece of the journey and where I am today. And I'm forever grateful, forever grateful.
Well, I think one of the secrets to winning is belief. And I mean and you had it at 19, and so did I. And this is why I noticed it. I've always wondered why people actually don't have belief. Like, I've always had belief. And I've truly, I realized my parents questioned, like, for me, they questioned everything. They're like, what are you doing? I don't think this is a great idea, all the stuff. However, they never doubted me. There's a difference. They can question what you're doing and never doubt you. And I know Ed talks about this in a marriage. People are like, oh, my wife or husband doesn't support you. There's a difference between support and like belief.
Belief. So good. Absolutely.
So, yeah, I just had noticed that. I was like, yeah, you're an old entrepreneur.
That's so good. And I think that's the thing, right? Like, people will get out of alignment and they'll be like, oh, my spouse, or oh, my family, or oh, my friends, or oh, my circle. And it's like, first of all, what requires you to be in alignment is like clarity around your vision and goals. Like, it's not about other people. Like, are you clear about the life you want to create? Are you clear about your core values?
And then are you doing the work to do it?
Yeah. Are you clear about the results that you're after? And if you're not, then guess what? You're not too late. You can just recreate alignment by getting clear again about your core values, your vision, and your goals. What are the results you're after? And stop the blame game and move into a place of, and I always say, the biggest thing for me that I've had over my, 35-year journey of professional and personal development is the biggest muscle that we build is self-awareness. Right? Because the more that I became self-aware of my thoughts, the more I became self-aware of my bad habits, the more I became self-aware of my circle and who belonged in my front row versus in the bleachers, right? Not necessarily discarding people, but there's a time and a season sometimes for people in your life. And so for me, it's like looking at all the self-awareness piece. The truth is that our fears and our destiny are always going to be on the same playground. So how do I, from a self-awareness place, develop myself to say, okay, the voice of doubt's going to show up, right? If I'm going to get on a big stage, voice of doubt's going to show up. I had a call with Gary Vee last week, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, I had to like pray over it. I was like, okay, it's just Gary Vee. Like, I don't ever get starstruck by anybody. I don't. And I was like, no voice of doubt here. Like, it's, you have an opportunity. This presented itself, like things, when things are happening and you don't question them. You're like, thank you. It's a gift, be in gratitude. But I think one of the things that's worked well for me around this self-awareness thing is clearly knowing that the voice of doubt is going to come in, right? For some people that shows up as imposter syndrome. For some people, it's just self-sabotage because the voice of doubt is really loud. And I've had so many tools that I've learned to change the channel, right? But the one thing that's worked really well for me is I actually have an appointment in my calendar every Friday at 4:10. Today at 4:10, my alarm will go off and it says voice of doubt, and I will actually give it space. So on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, when maybe something pops up and I have a voice of doubt moment, I simply say, cool, you can come back Friday at 4:10. And I move it away so I can stay in momentum, continue to take action, not end up paralyzed. And I know that on Friday at 4:10, when the alarm goes off, most times, 98% of the time, I'm like, all right, what was it? Nothing. It's already gone because I took the action and stayed in momentum.
Oh, cool.
However, If I get there and it needs room, I have 20 minutes that I can journal. And I pull out my journal and I go into that reflective space of, this is what I'm feeling this week. This is what I'm thinking this week. And then kind of looking at like, why is this happening? And looking for evidence to change the belief. Is it a limiting belief? But I have room for self-awareness, but it doesn't allow me I don't get tripped up all week long. And if I do, if I get to Friday and the tools that I have in the tool bag aren't working, guess what? Support, therapy, energy work, massage, whatever I need. Reach out to my inner network, reach out to whoever I need to pull me out. So I don't stay stuck, right? And we just keep going. So hopefully that's helpful.
Guys, I hope you all noticed that and wrote that down. It's a really tangible idea to set a time to let your doubt out or let your fear out or like set that. Is so freaking cool. I love that. So you went into as admin into financial services, and then let's fast forward a little bit. You went into your own company. Tell us a little bit about that. And then, you know, that had some major growth. You can tell us a little bit about that. And then what caused you to transition out of that? That was a successful business into what you're doing now.
Yeah. So I did. I transitioned in my mid-20s from financial services over to property and casualty, right? So again, I had a great mentor, brought me in and was like, hey, you know what? And I honestly, I didn't love financial services. I love the planning pieces, but I just wasn't my jam. I still have my financial licenses, but I'm like, it's not my jam. I refer it to people like you and let you take the reins. So you love it. So for me, I loved property and casualty because when I was brought into the agency that I worked for, I was like a producer, an outside producer. Go knock on doors in that plaza, the hair salon, the liquor store, the church, whatever's there. It was like, knock on the door, ask for an opportunity and bring it back. And we will teach you, of course I was licensed, but we'll teach you how to risk manage each of these different things. And at first I focused on like hair salons, beauty salons. Then I focused on garages. So I got really good at one niche and learning what their risks were, what to identify, and had great mentorship there. And I loved my day because I wasn't stuck in a cubicle. I was with people, and every entrepreneur's journey was different. I could go to 4 beauty salons and have a different story of their starting point, their midpoint, where they were in their business, their challenges. And I loved the journey, stepping on the journey with them. And it wasn't, the insurance is the vessel that I connected to people. That's how I see it. And I ended up starting at one agency, going to another. To be in full transparency, I made sure that wherever I went, I got the free trips. If the owner of the agency qualified for a trip because of my production, it was written in my contract that I got the free trips because they were on my vision board. And travel was one of my core values, right? So I ended up actually meeting the gentleman that I ended up buying his agency in Hawaii on a sales trip. And he started commissioning me to come and work for him. He had an agency, wanted to open up another location and then another location. I was like, no, I'll never work for you, blah, blah, blah. And then I did. I was like, all right, I'll open up a location. And then fast forward 3 years later, and I ended up with another woman buying all 3 locations. And it was a great opportunity. I was 29 years old. I had no business doing it. Thank God I had my financial crap together because I was able to, we got declined by 5 banks, but I stuck with it. And it was a $1.3 million purchase. And I had to figure out how to leverage every bit of credit, every opportunity. I had bought a home, so I had equity, but I knew how to not get in trouble. I knew the numbers. I'd already done his payroll and his money. He was kind of running other businesses. So I knew the numbers could work. And I always say I was blessed with that opportunity, and I took the risk. It was a calculated risk. I'm a risk taker, but I like calculated risk. Mm-hmm. I knew I could make the numbers work. And for the next 17 years, we grew that to, over 12 million in sales. And it was a great ride. I loved it and loved the connection. We were a pillar in the community, but we had a plan. We said we were going to be done at the 15-year mark. And I was 30, right? So I'm like, at 45, I'll do something else. I'm going to retire at 50. Here I am, 55. And I'm like, just moving into like the best part of my life. And so I think for me, it was a beautiful ride, but I also, quite honestly, didn't do a lot of the work that I'm doing with people today. And I built the monster. I was working 80 hours a week, 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week, not taking care of myself, my measurement of success was all based on what metric could I crush again next year, right? How many clients, how many referrals, how much growth, what's our retention? We never didn't grow. And the truth was that the business was running me. And, one of the top lines in the Path to Profits, I can see readers that highlight on their Kindle. I think 180 something times it's been highlighted. Are you going to be profitable in support of your life or at the expense of it? And I was definitely profitable at the expense of my life. And so for me, I had already set into vision that it was a 15-year plan. We got to 17 years. Neither one of us were making moves. I had gotten divorced 4 years earlier, and therefore there were no moves financially because I was the one responsible for child support, alimony, all the things. And I thought, I can't make this change now. I'm like the financial stability on both sides of the house and have a lot to manage. And so it took me another couple of years of discomfort and not feeling well, ending up in the ER thinking I'm having a heart attack and thinking, I don't want to go out this way. By the way, the number one statistic for agency principals is heart attack and death by 50. I'm not kidding. Like it's a true statistic. Okay.
Wow.
And so I was like, is this how it's going to end for me? Like I knew I was being called for more. And I was being called for more because I also had gone back to church after 17 years. I found a great place of fellowship that my daughter had been going to as a youth, and she had some medical issues. And she said, I need to get back to my place of worship. And I watched my daughter walk up front and ask for prayer and know that people could lay their hands on her and she could be healed. And I was just like, okay, I'm being called back into a place of faith as well through my daughter's example. There was a lot of changes. And honestly, the universe was calling me. God was calling me, and I was not answering. My daughter needed more. My fiance, who's now my husband, was hit by a car and literally like survived, but hit by a car and had a company that he was running that I had to step in to support and help and walk him through his recovery, which was almost a year, multiple surgeries and whatnot. And even with all of that, I literally was like back at work at 6 a.m, working till midnight because I was like, I can't stop. I can't stop. Right. And the truth was that I was choosing not to take the time to look at it all and believe that it could be different. I hired a life coach for the first time. I always had business consultants and masterminds and all the business focused things. And for the first time, I hired a life coach. And I read about that in Prosperity After Divorce because it was life-changing when somebody said, what's your ideal work day? What's your ideal weekend? What's your ideal weekday? And I was like, ideal? I'm an entrepreneur. You don't get to write your...
What does that mean?
I have 18 employees, 7,600 customers, and I'm on 5 nonprofit boards. What do you mean? And I thought, oh, you actually have to dream again. You have to step back and dream again. What would it look like? And the things for me that came up were really crazy. It was like nothing major. It was, I just want to get up and not yell at my kid in the morning on the way to school that we might be late. And I could change my work day instead of, getting to my office at 8:30 in the morning, get there at 9. Or instead of being at the first and last games with my 3-star athlete, that I would actually leave at 3:00 and get to the games. Like they weren't major things. But when I sat down and I did the work, the transition came from me going, can I really create this in the business that I have? Or is it time for a change that would allow me to create it? And the transition came from me doing the work and really envisioning what I wanted to create, what it would look like, and then coming to the conclusion that it wasn't there. And that intersected with, I knew I was being called to do something different. And so it was a true leap of faith. Luckily for me, I had built something to sell. Right? Where a lot of people, they don't focus on their business being something, they focus on it as being the cash cow, what they need now. And my challenge to entrepreneurs and business owners is that's great if you're clear that's what you want it to do. But if you want it to be something that you can eventually convert and sell, then you need to be building a very different business. And we built the business to sell. Every year we had it evaluated. We had protections in place. You know this, like buy-sell agreement, life insurance, disability insurance. And we didn't do the financial avoidance thing in the business, right? We knew that I know that the result of financial avoidance is always the same. It's missed opportunities, misaligned spending, and a lack of financial stability. And I felt like we did the work in the business that I could then apply the same thing in my life if I was going to make a transition. And I planned my way forward, roadmap and a runway. I didn't just wake up and say, I'm leaving my business. I didn't wake up and say, I'm leaving my marriage. I had the benefit, thank God, of a planned transition. Some people don't. Some people go through unplanned transitions. They wake up and their job is gone on an email from corporate America. Mm-hmm. And they're being called into a new place. They need a roadmap and a runway, right? But I think when we talk about transitions, right, you went from truck driving to financial services. So what, for both of us, what was it for you? What was that? How did you have the belief that you could go from the stability of that to a new thing and make it happen?
How did I?
Yeah.
Back to I always attribute it back to my parents. I just knew once I made my first paycheck, I was like, well, I made $350. I can make $1 million. That was just like black and white, clear as day for me, which, like I said, that's where I get it from my parents. Cause I'm like, apparently that's not normal. So, that's because I was homeschooled. So I didn't realize what normal was or not. I was like, this is my normal. I just don't hit snooze. I get up in the morning early. I do the things like this is my normal. And then I was like, this is not the normal. But so then you sold the business. And then you went, and now you're starting to do business consulting. Tell us a little bit about what you're passionate about now with where you're going.
Yeah. So now what I love is today I get to do this intersection of exactly what I did in my last chapter, which was really coming alongside of people on their journey and what they're dreaming about and what they want to create and the impact they want to make in the world with their products or services, and stepping back on the journey and really doing it again as a trusted advisor, right? I think many business owners don't think about the fact that their most successful come from putting the right trusted advisors on their team. And you can change advisors, but you better have advisors. You better have legal, you better have insurance, you better have a great CPA who's looking at strategy to help you make and keep more of your money, right? And have, for me, it's a seat at the table. It's an honor to have a seat at the table as an advisor. And I think, I work with people one-on-one from a consultancy perspective, but I also took and have created a brand called Envision. And I work with both aspiring and emerging and advancing entrepreneurs. I birthed an academy. So it's called Envision and Thrive Academy, where for membership, like somebody can come in for $97 a month and have a community around them. So if they are in a space where they don't have people in their bleachers or in their realm that are in their sphere to say, yes, you can think big. Yes, you can dream big. Yes, you need a roadmap and a runway. And here's the tools, mentorship, community, networking. I've created that incubator over the last 5 years. So what I love today is the mission is not just one of helping people unclog their cash flow and make, hit their goals one-on-one. But I've also built an element into my business where I can be of service and I can leverage my time, right, and my resources, and bring in other guest experts from my 30-year network to support people with their expertise, and watch what happens magically as you bring people together. So it's an element of both support and community is my mission, right? It's impact. We all are here to, in my opinion, like I bring together conscious creators and conscious leadership. And how do we affect the world in a great way? We're in Arte, you and I together. And that's it. Like we're rising to excellence. And then how do we take what we're doing there and becoming the best version of ourselves and applying excellence in our life and our businesses, and then take that up a level by collaborating and doing different things together so that we can make a bigger impact in the world. That's what I'm passionate about today. My mission, honestly, is to change the failed business statistic, flip it on its head. It's been 66% fail in the first 5 years forever, right? My goal before I die is that it changes. I don't care if it's 62%, 55%. The goal would be that it's nobody, it's 15%. But to have that number shift if I continue to be in mission and helping people know that, they can't make long-term decisions when they're drowning, they can't, if they don't understand the root problem and of causes of their problems and their successes in the business, then they're clouded by emotions and biases. The numbers are important. They separate the signals from the noise. They can show us when things are going great. They can help us figure out where we need to pivot. It's all of those things and coming along, and I have a gift of neutralizing the numbers because I've been where people have been. I've been where I couldn't pay my income taxes when I had a great year and I thought I planned well and I didn't. I've been in credit card debt. I've been at a point where employees quit and I had to rehire, or I hired the wrong people, or I had the wrong tenants, right? So I think it's today an opportunity to be in a place of leadership and support and give back. And then also live my best life, because I'm building this so that I have the freedom of doing the things that I want to do and how I want to do it, and not be killing myself 80 hours a week.
So good. I llove it. I know we could go on and on, but in wrapping up, I always have 3 final questions, and then anything that we didn't touch on today. And as guys, reach out to Michelle. I know she's more than happy to chat about whatever, or reach out for some coaching, or not coaching, consulting.
Yeah.
All that kind of good stuff. We'll have all of her links in the show notes. But all right, first and final question is, if someone's looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you would say that could help them find it?
Get quiet enough to lean inward and truly get in touch with who you are, the things that matter to you, your values, your gifts, and you'll find your way. You'll find your way, and you'll even find your people that will light the candle and not blow it out.
Number 2, what's a favorite quote and why?
Don't let blind people proofread your vision.
I like that. That's cute.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite quotes. Maybe not politically correct, but it is one of my favorite quotes.
I love it. Never heard of it. So that's good. Number 3, it's yours. Oh, well, there you go. I like that.
Yeah. Don't let blind people proofread your vision.
That's so good.
They can't see what you see.
True. Oh, man, that makes so much sense. And number 3 and final question is, what's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
She came, she lived, she loved.
Love it. So you run into someone in a coffee shop, they're like, Michelle, that's great. I've got this like doubt time scheduled. I've got some of these things. Really working on an ideal life and visioning it and making it happen, all that kind of stuff we went through. What's something we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful for our listeners?
I think honestly, it's seeing your goals daily, right? Like vision boarding, we talk about it, right? Like I've got my vision board right here. And I think that when you see your goals daily, right? A lot of people will do, especially this time of year, we're doing goal setting, right? Everybody's looking forward, figuring out and I think if you see your goals as these are the results that I'm after, you can start making sure that you're taking aligned action and turning off the noise when everything else is coming at you, because we clearly get distracted in everything that we could be doing. And we start to forget the results that we're after. So I would say, seeing our goals daily, not just doing them and putting them in a, notebook or annual planning or in a journal, but having them written, having them visual in front of us. On a vision board or some other, format, it reminds us that these things are our top priority and the results we're after. So that would be the thing that, grab the path to profits. And the whole first entire pillar is about how to set those vision and goals in a way that you've never done it. And the best part about the book is that there's exercises at the end of every chapter and section so that it will walk you through the DIY version of how to do it with impact. That'll make a difference and then really move you then from the vision into the numbers. The flow pillar is all about the numbers, and then the vision pillar is all about visibility and making sure that people know that you're open for business and looking for more and creating strategic partnerships. But it starts with vision and goals and knowing what you're after. Do the work.
I love that. Do the work. So good. Guys, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share this. This will be good for a lot of people. Make sure to do all those things. Let's go out there. Let's change the world one starfish or one person at a time. If we can change one life at a time together, we can change the world. Thanks for being on.
Beautiful.